Common operating system types. In this lesson, we're going to look at different operating systems and the common traits that you'll find between them. So let's go ahead and get started. Computers are pretty much useless without software. While there are many types of software programs, the most important one you'll ever deal with and not realize it was a program is really the operating system. Operating systems have many different complex functions. The two critical are interfacing with hardware and being a platform on other applications can run. Now, the operating system provides a consistent environment for other software to execute commands. The operating system provides users with an interface with the computer so they can send commands, which is input, and receive feedback or results, which is output. To do this, the operating system must communicate with the computer hardware to perform tasks. An application is software that is written to supplement the commands available to a particular operating system. Each application is specifically compiled or configured for that particular operating system on which it will run. For this reason, the application relies on the operating system to provide many of its basic tasks. So you have the user that interacts with that application. Then you have the operating system that is the platform for those applications to run on. And also, the operating system communicates with the hardware. So, in detail, the user interfaces with the application, and the application interacts with the operating system, and the operating system talks to the underlying hardware to perform those functions, and it goes back the other way as well. Our hardware will communicate with the operating system, back with the application, and the user gets the required output as well. So we know, and we're very familiar with some complex applications, Microsoft Word or browsers. Um, Such as simple programs as the command line. Those are all applications that we're used to and that we deal with and we're comfortable in using. Other things that you'll find in the modern operating system common traits is a something called a graphical user interface or a GUI. It's a method by which a person communicates with the computer using a graphical images, icons, and other methods other than just text. The GUI allows a user to use a mouse, a touchpad, or a keyboard to input information into the application and so forth. Now, also with different operating systems, they're going to find different versions. Like right now, we're looking at a version of Windows called Windows 10. There was a version of Windows called Windows 7, and so forth. You'll find that common among the modern operating systems that have a GUI. Also, this operating system in this application is built on a type of software called a source code. Now, the actual code is what defines and makes how this software works. Computer operating systems can be open source, meaning that the operating system can be examined, modified by anyone, or it can be closed sourced, meaning that only a developer of that vendor or that company can examine that code and make changes. We're going to look at different vendors' operating systems Windows, Apple, Linux, and Chrome OS. So let's go ahead and look at those. So, Windows, we're very familiar with Windows, one of the most popular operating systems out there. Many versions are out there, also different application uses, meaning Windows Desktop is for desktop environments. There's also Windows Server for server environments, or embedded Windows or Windows Embedded for embedded type devices. Large industry support, wide range of software options. There's a lot of manufacturers of softwares made for Windows. And because of its large industry support, its large user base, it makes it a big target for security exploitation as well. Linux is a free open source operating system. Now, there are many different flavors or distributions of Linux. There's Ubuntu Linux, Red Hat, or Fedora Linux, CentOS, and many other different distributions. Because it's open source, the community can get involved and open and change the operating system code and make variations. And that's how the many different distributions came about. Works on many hardware platforms, has a large active user community. However, there are limited support options. Now, there are some companies that support Linux, but not as many as Windows. Apple Mac OS. Apple laptop and computer platforms. Specifically, their hardware is made for their operating systems and their software. Very intuitive to use, extremely compatible, fewer security concerns because it's not widely used as the Windows, however, very popular. Less industry support. There are companies out there that support Apple Mac OS, but again, not a lot compared to Windows. Requires the Apple hardware. Apple specifically makes their hardware for their operating system. And also it's a higher initial upfront cost for Apple Mac OS and Apple devices. Chrome OS. Chrome OS was designed around the Chrome browser, based on the Linux kernel. Most apps are web based and all data are stored in the cloud. This is a true cloud based operating system. Large hardware support. There are a lot of different manufacturers that have their own line of PCs and devices that they produce with the Chrome operating system on it. Apple iPad OS. This is Apple's operating system for its iPad tablets, a variant of the iOS. Some of the features that you'll find on the iPad is the multitasking features for tablet format. Has the browser, and has the second monitor capability as well as keyboard and mouse support. Apple iOS. This is Apple's iPhone operating system. It's a popular mobile platform, strong support for accompanying hardware. First released in 2007, the original iPhone operating system was iOS. Apple also has its Apple App Store. It's the ecosystem where you would get the Apple um, platform software that you can download for your devices. Google Android, originally released in 2008, open source based on Linux, supported on many manufactured devices, and this too is also a popular mobile platform. And its ecosystem is the Google Play Store. Now, we looked at different operating systems. Now, underlying for those operating systems is the file structure. And the file structure is how the file system is laid out. So, the new technology file system, or the NTFS, this is a Windows based file system, more advanced than other file allocation file systems, which we'll look at in a moment. Its features are compression, encryption, disk quota, security, and recovery, and it's not compatible on all operating systems. Now, the file allocation table, or the FAT, and FAT32 was originally introduced with Windows 95, provided support for larger than 2 GB files. 32-bit clustering, less wasted space, and was supported by the current Windows versions. Extensible file allocation, or exFAT. Now, this is a proprietary file system for flash drives. The default file system for USB flash is over the 32 gigabyte limit, compatible with Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. Now we're going to look at some other file systems. The third extended file system, or EX3. Now, this is not supported by Windows. This is a default file system for Linux. One of its capabilities is its journaling capabilities. There was also a new version of the third extended file system, EX3, which is EXT4, fourth extended file system. It was enhanced over the EXT3. This is also used in Android and other OSs. Now, this one is Windows compatible. Then we have Apple's file system, or APFS. This is proprietary to Apple, and was a replacement for the HFS and HFS Plus, introduced for support of SSD, or solid state drive support. Some of its features is compression, encryption, snapshots, resolved prior issues with HFS Plus. Windows cannot read the APFS formatted drives. Now, one thing you're going to find also when you're dealing with vendors and operating systems is each may have its own period of time that that operating system has a life. Some version vendors set their own end of life when that operating system is no longer Supported by updates. It would be the end of updates and end of support. We're quite familiar with that. We've seen that in the Windows platform, where it may have an end of life and updates may end shortly thereafter that. Update limitations, iOS and Windows and Android, they check and prompt for updates installations automatically. Chrome OS will install the updates automatically. Compatibility concerns, data output files can run across different operating systems. So if you have a Windows or a Linux or Mac and Chrome OS, now files produced by applications can run across all those platforms like a PDF or doc files. However, system files would not be compatible with one another. So those would be the compatibility concerns there. So, in this lesson, we took a brief overview of different operating systems: Windows, Linux, Mac OS, and Chrome OS. We looked at some of the phone and tablet operating systems that these vendors provide. And we talked about some file structures as well as the vendor lifecycle limitations, as well as some compatibility concerns. That's it for this lesson, and I will see you in the next lesson.